Sam lived in a quiet neighborhood at the edge of town. His small house had a neat lawn, a few flower beds, and a wooden fence that leaned a little but still stood strong. Sam liked the peace and freedom his home gave him. He had chosen this house carefully, not just for the quiet streets or the cozy rooms, but because he was not part of the neighborhood's homeowners association, also called the HOA. Sam liked living without the extra rules, extra fees, or constant supervision. One bright and sunny morning, Sam stepped outside to get the newspaper. He noticed something unusual on his front door. A piece of paper was taped there, waving slightly in the morning breeze. Squinting at it, he saw the words in bold red letters, "Notice of fine, $25 for trash violation." Sam raised an eyebrow and shook his head. He looked around the yard. Everything was exactly as it should be. His trash can was by the side of the house, lid closed, nothing spilling. The driveway was empty. Nothing about the yard seemed wrong. Confused, he picked up the paper. It had a stamp from the HOA and was signed by someone named Karen. Sam groaned. He had heard stories about Karen. She was the president of the HOA, known for strict rules and constant patrols. She seemed to enjoy finding small mistakes and making big deals out of them. But Sam had never signed any HOA agreement, and he did not pay their fees. This fine made no sense. As he held the paper, Karen herself appeared at the end of the street. She was walking fast, clipboard in hand, sharp eyes scanning the area. Her hair was tied in a tight bun, her lips pressed together like she was ready for battle. She spotted Sam and quickly marched toward him. "You left your trash can out past 8 in the morning," Karen said as she came closer. Her finger pointed sharply at the paper in his hand. "That is a violation. $25. Pay now." Sam looked at her calmly. "I'm not in the HOA. You have no authority over my property," he said. His voice was steady but firm. Karen gasped, looking offended. "Everyone in this neighborhood follows the rules. You live here, so you pay. You cannot ignore this." Sam folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "Not me. I didn't sign any HOA agreement. I don't owe you anything." Karen's face turned red with anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed. She spun around on her heels and stormed back toward the street, clipboard bouncing with each step. Sam shook his head and smiled faintly. He knew this was only the start. He had dealt with difficult people before, but Karen seemed to enjoy making small conflicts into large battles. He went back into the house thinking about how best to respond. The rest of the day passed quietly. Sam worked on his laptop, made lunch, and checked his mail, but his mind kept returning to the fine. He wanted to make it very clear to Karen that she could not control him. But he also wanted to do it in a way that would stop her from bothering him again. After thinking for a while, he had an idea. Sam went into his shed and grabbed a large wooden board, a brush, and a can of paint. He carried them back to the yard and began painting bold letters on the board. He took his time, making sure the letters were large and clear. When he finished, the board read, "Not in HOA." He stood back and admired his work. It was simple but effective. Anyone walking down the street would immediately notice it. The next morning, Karen appeared again, walking down the street with her clipboard, checking houses. When she saw Sam's new sign, she nearly tripped. Her eyes widened in disbelief and her mouth opened, but she said nothing at first. She walked closer and squinted at the bold letters. "You can't put that up," she snapped. Her voice was loud, sharp, and commanding. Sam leaned calmly on his fence, looking directly at her. "Watch me," he said simply. Karen's face turned a deep shade of red. She clenched her fists and turned on her heels. "This isn't over," she called over her shoulder as she walked away. Sam watched her disappear down the street, feeling a small sense of victory. The rest of the morning went quietly. Sam enjoyed his coffee in the sunlight, thinking about how Karen would respond next. By noon, he noticed a few neighbors had stopped to look at the sign. Some whispered to each other, clearly amused. Others gave him approving nods. Sam smiled. This was better than he expected. By evening, Karen had returned, this time with a few other HOA members. They stood at the edge of his property, whispering to each other and pointing at the sign. Sam walked outside to greet them calmly. "Hello, Karen," he said. "Can I help you with something?" Karen stepped forward, her face tight with anger. "You cannot post this sign. It is disrespectful. Remove it immediately or we will take action." Sam shook his head. "I don't have to. I'm not in the HOA. This sign is perfectly legal." Karen's eyes flashed with frustration. Legal or not, this is an insult to the neighborhood. You are causing trouble. Sam smiled faintly. I'm just stating the truth. I am not in the HOA and I don't owe you anything. Karen's face twisted in irritation. She turned to the other HOA members and muttered something under her breath. They looked unsure, glancing at Sam and then at each other. It was clear they were used to following Karen's instructions, but they also seemed nervous about confronting someone not in the HOA. Sam went back inside his house, leaving the group standing outside. He could hear Karen arguing with her friends, but he ignored them. He had planned this carefully. He wanted to send a message that he would not be bullied or fined unfairly. The next few days were quiet. Sam kept his sign up and the neighborhood slowly began to notice it. Some neighbors smiled as they walked by. Some gave him thumbs-up gestures. Karen continued to patrol, but she kept her distance. Sam felt a small sense of satisfaction. He had defended his right to live freely without unnecessary interference. One afternoon, Sam decided to make one more adjustment to his yard. He added a small flag next to the sign, bright and colorful to make it impossible to ignore. The flag read, "Independent Homeowner." When Karen passed by later that day, she stopped abruptly. Her hands tightened around her clipboard and she looked like she might explode. Sam stepped out of his house, calm and composed. "You're making this worse for yourself," Karen said. "I don't think so," Sam replied. "I'm just stating a fact. I don't owe any fines and I'm not part of the HOA, that's all." Karen took a deep breath, her face still red. She glanced at the neighbors who were watching from their porches. She realized that arguing further might make her look unreasonable. Slowly, she turned and walked away, muttering under her breath. Sam smiled to himself. He had won the first battle, but he knew Karen would try something again. Still, he felt confident. He had stood his ground and he had done it peacefully and legally. That night, Sam went to bed feeling proud. He had defended his independence and he had done it without losing his calm. He knew that tomorrow might bring more challenges, but he was ready. For the first time in a long while, Sam felt completely in control of his own home and his own life. And so, the small wooden sign remained in his yard, bold and clear, for all to see. It was more than a message. It was a statement. Sam was not part of the HOA, and he would not be bullied by anyone. The quiet neighborhood had suddenly become a little more interesting, and Sam had found himself at the center of it all. The next morning, Sam woke up to the sound of birds singing outside his window. The sun was shining, the air was fresh, and everything seemed peaceful. But Sam knew better than to expect Karen, the HOA president, to let things stay peaceful for long. He stepped outside to check the sign and flag in his yard. Both were still standing strong, bold against the green grass and bright flowers. Neighbors waved as they walked by, some smiling and some whispering. Sam nodded back politely. It felt good to know that at least some people appreciated his small act of independence. But just as he was enjoying the calm, he noticed Karen coming down the street. This time she wasn't alone. She had brought 2 other HOA board members with her, both carrying clipboards and looking serious. Karen's expression was fierce, her eyes sharp like a hawk. "You again?" Sam said softly, leaning on his fence. He felt calm but alert. Karen stopped a few feet away, tapping her clipboard with a finger. "Sam," she said loudly, "we are officially notifying you again. The sign and the flag are inappropriate and disrespectful. You must remove them immediately or face further consequences." Sam raised an eyebrow. "I am not part of the HOA," he replied. "I don't owe any fines. The sign is a simple fact. There is nothing inappropriate about it." Karen took a deep breath as if she was trying to control her anger. "This is not just about the sign," she said. "You're causing trouble for the neighborhood. People are talking. It makes the community look bad. We need everyone to follow the rules." Sam shook his head slowly. "I am following the law. I'm not part of your rules. That is all. If neighbors are talking, maybe they should see the truth for themselves." Karen's 2 board members looked uncomfortable. One whispered something under his breath and the other glanced around nervously, clearly unsure about how to proceed. Sam noticed their hesitation and smiled faintly. He had seen this before. People who usually followed Karen's orders were often unsure when confronted with someone standing calmly and legally against her. Karen's face flushed red. "We will escalate this if you don't comply," she said. "You may face legal action and you may be fined further." Sam nodded. "I will wait for any legal documents. Until then, I will keep the sign. I am not breaking any laws. Karen glared at him for a moment, then turned and whispered to the two board members. They nodded quickly and began walking away, muttering as they went. Sam watched them leave, then turned back to his yard. He knew that this would not be the last time Karen tried to pressure him. That afternoon, Sam decided to prepare for the next confrontation. He went inside his house and began researching HOA rules and local property laws. He wanted to make sure he had all the information he needed if Karen decided to escalate further. He printed out several pages from the city's website, showing clearly that homeowners who were not part of an HOA were not subject to its fines or regulations. Sam also started thinking creatively. If Karen wanted to escalate, he could do more than just defend himself. He could send a message that he was confident and prepared, and that he would not be intimidated. He grabbed a larger wooden board from the shed and began painting another message, bigger and bolder than the first. This new sign read, "Private property, not an HOA. Violations will not be accepted." Sam placed it near the front edge of his yard, so it could be seen clearly from the street. He stepped back and admired his work. It was simple, clear, and made a strong statement. The next morning, Karen returned again, looking more determined than ever. She stopped at the corner of Sam's yard and gasped. Her eyes widened at the second sign. Sam stepped out calmly and leaned on his fence, waiting for her reaction. "This is outrageous," Karen said, her voice rising. "You are mocking the neighborhood. You cannot do this." "I am not mocking anyone," Sam said gently. "I am just stating a fact. I am not part of the HOA. I do not owe fines. That is all. This is my property, and I have every right to post these signs." Karen took a step closer, her face red. "You will regret this," she said sharply. "I am contacting the board and they will take action." "You cannot ignore us," Sam stayed calm. "I will wait for any formal action. Until then, the signs stay." Karen turned to leave, but she paused and looked back. "Neighbors are talking about this. You are making the community look bad." Sam smiled faintly. "If the community looks bad, maybe it is only because people are realizing that some rules are not fair." Karen walked away, muttering under her breath. Sam watched her go and then returned to his house. He knew that Karen would be calling meetings, sending emails, and perhaps even consulting a lawyer. He needed to be ready. Over the next few days, Sam noticed subtle changes in the neighborhood. Some neighbors whispered as they walked past, pointing at the signs. Others stopped to greet him with a friendly wave or a quiet thumbs up. A few even stopped to ask him questions. "You're really not in the HOA?" one neighbor asked. "Nope," Sam replied with a small smile. "I chose not to join. That's my right." "Does Karen bother you often?" the neighbor asked. "Not anymore," Sam said. "I'm prepared and I know my rights." The quiet support from his neighbors made Sam feel more confident. He realized that many people were secretly frustrated with Karen's strict rules, but they were too afraid to stand up. By being calm and firm, he was showing that it was possible to protect one's own rights without causing trouble. One evening, while sipping tea on his porch, Sam thought about the next step. If Karen continued her attempts to intimidate him, he wanted to have backup ready. He decided to call the local sheriff's office to clarify his legal standing. He explained that he was a homeowner, not part of any HOA, and that someone had been threatening fines on his property. The sheriff's office was very clear. If you are not part of the HOA and if they do not have a signed agreement from you, you are not subject to their fines. You have every right to post signs on your property. Keep copies of any notices they give you and you are protected under property law. Sam felt a wave of relief. Now he was even more confident. He knew that if Karen tried to escalate, he could defend himself with facts and authority. The next morning, Karen returned with a printed document in hand. She had clearly consulted the HOA board and was attempting to intimidate Sam again. "This is an official notice," she said, holding it out. "You are violating neighborhood rules. Remove the signs immediately." Sam took the paper and read it carefully. He smiled. It was full of empty threats and references to rules that did not apply to him. He nodded politely. "Thank you for the information. I am aware of my rights. The signs stay." Karen's face twisted with frustration. She turned to leave but suddenly stopped and raised her voice. "This is not over," she shouted. Sam watched her walk away calmly. He knew that she was frustrated because she could not bully him or control him. It gave him satisfaction to know that standing firm and knowing the law made a difference. By the end of the week, the neighborhood had noticed the signs and the flag. People whispered, some approving, some unsure, but all noticing. Sam realized that his actions had sparked curiosity and discussion. He had not just defended his property. He had also shown others that it was possible to stand up for oneself. One afternoon, Sam decided to make one more adjustment. He added a small wooden frame to the signs with the words, "Sheriff confirmed, property rights protected." Now, anyone who walked past could see that Sam was prepared, informed, and calm. The signs were not meant to insult anyone. They were meant to protect him and clarify his rights. Karen passed by later that day and froze when she saw the new frame. Her face turned a deeper shade of red. Sam stepped outside, calm as ever. "You really like causing trouble," Karen said. "I am not causing trouble," Sam replied. "I am simply protecting my property. That is all." Karen turned and walked away without another word. Sam watched her go and felt a sense of calm satisfaction. He had not yelled, argued, or acted aggressively. He had simply stood firm, and it had worked. As the sun set, Sam sat on his porch sipping tea, looking at his yard. The signs were visible, the neighbors were aware, and Karen had not yet returned. Sam smiled to himself. He knew that more challenges might come, but he felt prepared. He had defended his independence, his rights, and his peace of mind. And so the signs remained in his yard, clear and bold. They were more than just wood and paint. They were a symbol of standing firm, knowing one's rights, and facing challenges calmly and confidently. The next week brought unusual tension to the quiet neighborhood. Sam's "not in HOA" signs had become a topic of conversation among the neighbors. Some whispered with curiosity, others looked impressed, and a few muttered complaints to themselves about the disruption. Yet Sam felt no anger, only calm determination. He had prepared well and knew he was in the right. Karen, however, did not share his calm. Her frustration had grown steadily since she first saw the signs. Every morning she walked her usual route through the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning Sam's yard. Each glance at the bold letters on the signs made her jaw tighten. She was used to controlling everyone around her, and Sam's quiet defiance was a challenge she could not accept. That Monday morning, Karen returned to Sam's yard, more determined than ever. She carried her clipboard, a stack of printed forms, and even a small camera. Her plan seemed clear. She wanted to document Sam's property as problematic and bring it to the HOA board, hoping they could intimidate him into compliance. "You again," Sam said calmly as he stepped onto his porch. His hands rested lightly on the railing, his expression relaxed. He was ready for whatever Karen might try. Karen adjusted her clipboard and raised her voice. "Sam, we are formally documenting your violation of neighborhood rules. These signs are inappropriate, disrespectful, and disruptive. You must remove them immediately." Sam shook his head gently. "I am not part of the HOA. You cannot find me. The signs are factual statements, not violations." Karen frowned as if he had spoken in a language she could not understand. "Everyone in this neighborhood follows the rules. You cannot ignore us. You will face consequences." "I will wait for any formal action," Sam replied calmly. "Until then, everything stays." Karen huffed and began taking photos of the signs with her small camera. She circled the yard, snapping images from every angle. Sam watched her quietly, noting each step she took. She seemed more agitated than before, and her gestures were sharp and precise, as if trying to intimidate him with her camera. After she finished, Karen gathered her papers and took a few steps back. "This is your final warning," she said. "We will be bringing this to the HOA board. You are making a scene. You are disrupting the neighborhood." Sam leaned on the railing, smiling faintly. "I am not disrupting anyone. I am simply stating a fact. I am not part of the HOA. You are free to bring your concerns to the board, but I am confident they will see that you cannot find me." Karen's face turned red. "You will regret this," she said sharply before walking away. Sam watched her leave, feeling calm. He knew that Karen would likely try more creative methods to pressure him next. That afternoon, Sam received an email. It was from the HOA board, copied to Karen. The email contained more formal language than her previous notes. It requested that Sam remove the signs immediately, citing community standards and respect for neighbors. Sam read the email carefully. He noted that nowhere in the message did it explain any legal reason he had to comply. He saved the email and replied politely, stating, "I am not part of the HOA. I have reviewed local property laws and confirmed with the sheriff's office that HOA rules do not apply to me. I will not be removing my signs. Thank you for your attention." Sending the reply gave Sam a quiet satisfaction. He had clearly documented his actions and he was calm, firm, and professional. This was important, he thought, because if Karen tried to escalate further, he had evidence that he had acted reasonably and respectfully. The next day, Karen returned again. This time she brought a small group of neighbors with her. They stood at the edge of Sam's yard, whispering, pointing at the signs, and occasionally glancing at Sam. She seemed to think that presenting a small audience might pressure him into compliance. "You see, Sam," Karen said, gesturing toward the assembled neighbors, "everyone is talking about this. The signs are offensive. They are disrespectful. You must remove them." Sam looked at the neighbors calmly and smiled politely. "I am not being disrespectful," he said. "I am simply stating that I am not part of the HOA, nothing more. I am on my own property following the law. That is all." The neighbors exchanged glances. Some appeared to be impressed by Sam's calmness. Others whispered quietly among themselves, clearly curious but hesitant to speak out. Karen noticed the hesitation and fumed inwardly. She had expected her little group to intimidate Sam, but he remained unshaken. Karen finally shook her head, muttering, "This isn't over," she said, turning to leave. But before she walked away, Sam called out gently, "You are welcome to try, but I will not be bullied. I suggest staying calm. That works much better than anger." Karen froze for a moment, clearly annoyed by his composure, then walked off with her small group of followers. Sam watched them leave, feeling a quiet sense of pride. His calm, rational approach was clearly making a difference. That evening, Sam decided to take another precaution. He went to the shed and retrieved a larger wooden board. This time he painted an even more detailed sign, explaining his position clearly. "Private property, not an HOA, fines not applicable. Legal rights confirmed by local authorities." Sam placed the new sign in the yard alongside the others. Now anyone passing by could clearly see that he had prepared carefully, knew his rights, and had verified everything legally. The next morning, Karen returned once more. Her expression was a mix of frustration and disbelief. She stopped at the edge of Sam's yard, hands on her hips. "Sam, this is excessive," she said. "You are escalating unnecessarily. Remove these signs immediately." "I am not escalating," Sam replied calmly. "I am clarifying my rights. This is my property, and I am following the law." Karen's face turned even redder. She turned slightly to glance at a few neighbors who were watching from their porches. Sam noticed that some were giving him subtle nods or small smiles. The support of the community, even if quiet, strengthened his resolve. Karen muttered something under her breath and turned to leave. Sam watched her go, then returned to his house. He knew that she was becoming desperate. She had tried intimidation, formal emails, small audiences, and even documentation, but nothing had shaken him. Over the next few days, Sam noticed Karen taking more extreme measures. She walked the streets in the early morning, apparently checking for any small mistake that could justify a fine. She left notes on other people's doors, comparing them to his property, as if trying to make a case. Yet Sam remained calm. He continued to document everything carefully, kept all emails, and maintained his peaceful stance. One afternoon, a neighbor approached him quietly. "Sam," she said, "I think Karen is losing it. She keeps checking your yard, taking pictures, and now she's talking to other neighbors constantly. She doesn't know how to deal with you." Sam smiled politely. "I'm not worried. I am calm, I know my rights, and I am prepared. That is all that matters." Another neighbor, a man named Robert, came by the next day. "You're handling this well," Robert said. "Most people would have argued or gotten angry. You're just standing firm and calm," Sam nodded. "Anger doesn't help. Calmness and preparation do. I want to protect my property and my peace of mind. That is all." By the end of the week, Sam had added one more measure. He installed a small frame near the largest sign, containing copies of emails from the HOA board and the sheriff's office confirming his rights. Now anyone who stopped by could see clearly that he was informed, prepared, and legal in his actions. When Karen returned again, she stopped abruptly at the sight of the frame. She read the information, her face twisting with frustration. Sam stepped out of his house calmly. "You really are prepared," she said, trying to mask her anger. I am simply following the law and protecting my property, Sam replied. That is all. Karen turned and walked away without another word. For the first time, she seemed to realize that intimidation alone could not shake him. That evening, Sam sat on his porch watching the sunset. He felt a quiet satisfaction. Over the past week, he had handled repeated challenges calmly and strategically. He had documented everything, confirmed his rights, and maintained his peace. The neighborhood had noticed, some whispering in admiration, others in curiosity. The signs in his yard stood bold and clear, a symbol of independence, calmness, and careful preparation. Sam realized that he had not just protected his own property. He had also shown others that it was possible to stand firm without anger or conflict. And so, as night fell over the neighborhood, Sam felt confident. Karen's frustration might grow, and she might try even more creative tactics, but he was ready. He had prepared, stayed calm, and respected the law. That was his advantage, and he knew he could handle anything the HOA could throw at him next. The following week, the quiet neighborhood felt tension in the air. Sam's yard, with its bold "Not in HOA" signs and detailed frames explaining his legal rights, had become a point of discussion. Some neighbors whispered admiration, others muttered complaints. Sam remained calm, enjoying his morning coffee on the porch while observing the subtle energy around him. Karen, however, was not calm. Her frustration had grown steadily since the first confrontation. Each time she returned to Sam's yard and saw the clear signs, her jaw tightened and her hands clenched involuntarily. She had tried emails, verbal warnings, small audiences, and documentation, yet nothing had shaken Sam. Monday morning began as usual, with Sam stepping out to the fresh morning air. The sunlight glinted off the signs, making them impossible to ignore. As expected, Karen appeared at the end of the street, pacing back and forth. Today she seemed more determined than ever, her expression sharp and her movements tense. You again, Sam said casually, as he leaned on the fence. He wanted to remain calm and avoid escalating the situation. Karen stopped and raised her clipboard, her eyes narrowing. Sam, this is unacceptable. Your signs are offensive and disruptive. You must remove them immediately. Sam shook his head gently. I am not part of the HOA, Karen. These signs state facts. I am on my property, following the law and protecting my rights. That is all. Karen's lips tightened, her face flushing. You are making the neighborhood look bad. People are talking. You must comply. I have complied with the law, Sam replied evenly. That is all that matters. I am not breaking any rules. Karen's frustration grew, and she stepped closer to get a better view of the signs. She scanned the frames, reading the documentation from the sheriff's office and emails from the HOA board. Her face twisted as she realized how well prepared Sam was. This is ridiculous, Karen muttered. You are mocking the neighborhood with these signs. I am not mocking anyone, Sam said calmly. I am protecting my property. That is all. Karen's two board members who had accompanied her shuffled uncomfortably. They had expected Sam to become flustered or angry, but his calm demeanor and detailed preparation had clearly unsettled them. One whispered something under his breath, while the other glanced nervously at Karen, unsure of what to do. Karen finally turned her gaze back to Sam. If you refuse to remove these signs, we will take stronger action. You're making this personal, and that will not end well for you. Sam smiled faintly. I am not making this personal. I am following the law and standing up for my property. That is all. Karen huffed and stepped back, clearly frustrated. She muttered something about consulting the board and legal advice and turned to leave. Sam watched her go, still calm, knowing she was likely planning her next move. That afternoon, Sam decided to prepare further. He wanted to ensure that if Karen tried any more aggressive tactics, he would remain fully protected. He went back inside and printed copies of local property laws and regulations about HOA jurisdiction. He added a clear note explaining that non-HOA members could not be fined or forced to comply with HOA rules. Sam then retrieved another large wooden board from the shed. With careful strokes, he painted a new sign. Sheriff confirmed. Show rules do not apply. Private property protected. He placed it near the front edge of his yard, where it could be seen clearly from the street. The sign was bold, easy to read, and left no room for doubt. The next morning, Karen arrived with a larger group of HOA members. They gathered at the edge of Sam's yard, whispering and pointing at the multiple signs. Karen's face was red with frustration. "You are crossing the line now," she said loudly. "These signs are excessive. You are causing disruption. Remove them immediately." Sam stepped forward, calm as ever. "I am not causing disruption," he said. "I am protecting my property and my legal rights. This is my home." "That is all." Karen glanced at the assembled neighbors, hoping to gain support. Some looked away, hesitant to confront Sam. Others whispered quietly among themselves. Sam noticed the subtle support and felt reassured. He had remained calm, rational, and prepared, which made it difficult for Karen to pressure him. Karen's face tightened. "You think this is clever?" she said, her voice rising slightly. "You are showing disrespect to the neighborhood. This will not end well." "I am not disrespecting anyone," Sam replied evenly. "I am following the law and protecting my property. That is all." Karen sighed, muttered under her breath, and walked away, clearly flustered. Sam returned to his porch, sipping his tea, calm and collected. He knew Karen would not give up easily. She might escalate further, but he was ready. Over the next few days, Sam noticed Karen attempting different strategies. She left notes on his door, sent multiple emails, and even tried to speak to neighbors privately, asking them to pressure him. Sam carefully documented everything, saving emails and photographing notes. He wanted to be prepared for any situation that might arise. One morning, Karen approached with a new tactic. She had brought a small group of neighbors and was attempting to gather support by presenting herself as a victim. "Sam," she said loudly, "look at the disruption you are causing. Everyone is uncomfortable. This is not right. Remove the signs immediately." Sam calmly responded, "I am not causing disruption. I am protecting my property. The signs clearly state that I am not part of the HOA and that fines do not apply. I am following the law." Karen's face twisted in frustration. She tried to argue further, but Sam's calm, factual responses made her pause. She glanced at the neighbors standing behind her. Some looked uncertain, while others avoided eye contact entirely. Clearly, her attempt to pressure Sam using others was not working. The following day, Sam made another adjustment. He installed a small frame near the largest sign containing all relevant legal documents, emails from the HOA, and confirmation from the sheriff's office. Now anyone who stopped by could see that Sam had prepared thoroughly and was well within his rights. When Karen returned, she stopped abruptly at the sight of the frame. She read the information carefully, her face turning redder with frustration. Sam stepped onto the porch, calm and composed. "You really are prepared," she said through gritted teeth. "I am simply following the law and protecting my property," Sam replied. "That is all." Karen muttered under her breath and walked away, clearly realizing that intimidation alone could not force compliance. Sam watched her leave, calm and confident. By the end of the week, the neighborhood had noticed the signs and the detailed frames. People whispered, some impressed and others curious. Sam had not only defended his property, but had also shown that it was possible to stand firm without anger, without conflict, and while remaining entirely within the law. One evening, Sam reflected on the events. He realized that he had successfully managed multiple confrontations calmly, had documented every interaction, and had clearly communicated his rights. Karen's frustration had grown with each attempt to intimidate him, yet he had remained unshaken. The signs in his yard stood bold and clear. They were more than wood and paint. They were symbols of preparation, calmness, and independence. Sam knew that Karen might continue to escalate, but he was ready for anything. And so, as night fell over the neighborhood, Sam felt a quiet satisfaction. He had maintained his peace, protected his rights, and calmly faced challenges without resorting to anger or confrontation. The signs remained visible, clear, and firm, a statement of his independence and courage in standing up for himself. The sun rose gently over the quiet neighborhood, casting a warm glow on Sam's yard. The "Not in HOA" signs and the legal frames gleamed under the morning light. Sam sipped his coffee on the porch, watching as a few neighbors walked past, glancing at the signs with curiosity and quiet approval. He felt calm and satisfied. Over the past few weeks, he had handled repeated confrontations with Karen, the HOA president, calmly, legally, and strategically. But he knew the final challenge was approaching. Karen had become increasingly frustrated. Her previous attempts to intimidate Sam had failed. Emails, formal warnings, small audiences, and documentation had not shaken him. She now seemed to realize that her usual methods were useless. But Karen was not one to give up easily. She wanted a final solution to force compliance, or at least to make Sam look like he was in the wrong. That morning, Sam noticed Karen approaching with a determined stride. This time she was not alone. She had gathered several HOA members, a few neighbors, and even carried her clipboard, papers, and a small notebook. It was clear she intended to make this confrontation official. "Good morning, Sam," she called, her voice tight and formal. Her eyes scanned the yard and paused on the largest sign. "We are here to resolve this matter. The signs, the frames, the statements, they are excessive, disruptive, and disrespectful. You must remove them immediately." Sam remained calm, his hands resting lightly on the porch railing. "Good morning, Karen. I am not part of the HOA. I am on my own property, following the law and protecting my rights. The signs simply state that fact. There is nothing disrespectful or excessive about that." Karen's lips tightened. "You are making this personal. The neighborhood is upset. We will escalate this legally if necessary. You must comply." Sam nodded slowly. "I have already reviewed the laws, and I have confirmation from the sheriff's office. I am confident that my rights are fully protected. I will not remove the signs." Karen's face turned red with frustration. She looked at the assembled HOA members and neighbors, hoping for support. A few whispered among themselves, but most looked uncertain. Sam noticed subtle nods from some of the neighbors, small gestures of approval. He remained calm, knowing that his strategy of preparation, legality, and composure was working. Karen took a deep breath and stepped forward, holding out a stack of papers. "These are legal notices from the HOA," she said. "They state that your actions are violating community standards. If you do not comply, we will take further steps, including fines and possible legal action." Sam accepted the papers calmly and read them carefully. The notices were full of formal language and references to community rules. But nowhere did they provide evidence that he, as a non-HOA member, was obligated to comply. He smiled politely. "Thank you for providing these," Sam said. "I have already confirmed with the sheriff's office that HOA rules do not apply to me. I am not part of the HOA. My property rights are protected. I will not be removing the signs." Karen's frustration grew. She stepped back, muttering under her breath, clearly realizing that her threats had no legal standing. She looked at the neighbors, some of whom were whispering and watching carefully. It became clear to her that Sam's calmness and preparation had made it difficult for anyone to support aggressive action against him. "You are being unreasonable," Karen said sharply. "You are causing disruption. You are disrespecting the community. You must remove the signs." Sam shook his head gently. "I am not causing disruption. I am stating facts and protecting my property. That is all." Karen's two board members shifted uncomfortably. One whispered, "Maybe we should stop this." "He's calm and prepared." The other nodded silently. Karen glared at them but said nothing. She seemed increasingly aware that her usual tactics were failing. The tension remained high for a few moments. Sam remained calm, hands resting on the porch railing, smiling faintly. His composure and preparation were clearly unsettling Karen. Finally, Karen turned and spoke firmly, addressing everyone present. "This is your final warning," she said. "If you do not remove the signs, we will escalate this matter legally. You will face consequences." Sam stepped forward, speaking clearly and calmly. "I have already sought legal advice. I have confirmation from the sheriff's office. My rights are protected and I am fully aware of the law. There are no consequences applicable to me for maintaining these signs. This is my property, and I am following the law. That is all." Karen's face flushed even deeper. She glanced at the neighbors. Some avoided eye contact, others whispered quietly. It was clear that Sam's calm approach and preparedness had made them hesitant to support her. Karen muttered something and turned to leave, but she paused and looked at Sam one last time. "This is not over," she said quietly, her frustration evident. Sam nodded politely. "Thank you, Karen. Have a good day." As she walked away, Sam returned to his porch, sipping his coffee and feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had handled the confrontation calmly, legally, and strategically. He had not raised his voice, argued aggressively, or acted impulsively. He had simply prepared, stayed calm, and acted within his rights. Over the next few days, Karen made no further attempts to approach Sam directly. She sent a few emails, but they were formal and polite, lacking any real threat. Sam continued to maintain his signs and frames, confident that he was fully protected. The neighborhood had noticed the outcome. Neighbors walked past whispering and smiling. Some stopped to ask questions about how Sam had handled the situation. Sam explained calmly, sharing his approach: preparation, documentation, and remaining calm. He did not boast or belittle anyone. He simply explained his process. One afternoon, a neighbor named Julia approached him. "Sam," she said quietly, "I don't know how you stayed so calm. Most people would have gotten angry or upset. You handled everything perfectly." Sam smiled politely. "Calmness and preparation work better than anger. I wanted to protect my property and my rights without conflict. That is all." Another neighbor, Robert, nodded in agreement. "I wish more people would handle things like you did. It's impressive how you stayed calm and confident." Sam appreciated the support but remained humble. "I just followed the law and stayed prepared." That is all anyone needs to do. By the end of the week, the neighborhood had settled into a quiet routine again. Sam's signs remained visible, bold, and clear. They were no longer just statements about his HOA status. They were symbols of calm, preparation, and standing up for oneself. Karen had not returned to confront him directly. It became clear that her attempts to intimidate him had failed. Sam's calm, legal, and strategic approach had protected his rights and preserved his peace. One evening, Sam sat on his porch watching the sunset. He reflected on the events of the past few weeks. He realized that he had successfully handled multiple confrontations calmly, documented every interaction, and clearly communicated his rights. Karen's frustration had grown with each failed attempt to intimidate him, yet he had remained unshaken. The signs in his yard stood as more than wood and paint. They represented preparation, calmness, and independence. Sam knew that he had not only defended his property but had also shown others that it was possible to stand firm without anger or conflict. As night fell over the neighborhood, Sam felt a quiet satisfaction. He had maintained his peace, protected his rights, and faced challenges with patience and strategy. The not in HOA signs and the detailed frames remained in his yard, a clear and visible statement of his independence. The neighborhood had noticed, and even Karen, the persistent HOA president, had been forced to acknowledge that intimidation alone could not shake Sam's resolve. By remaining calm, prepared, and legal, Sam had successfully defended his property and his peace of mind. In the end, the quiet neighborhood returned to its normal rhythm. Neighbors walked past Sam's yard, some whispering in admiration, others curious but respectful. Sam's home remained a symbol of calm determination and careful preparation. And so, as the stars appeared in the night sky, Sam felt confident and proud. He had faced repeated challenges, handled confrontations with grace, and protected his property and independence. The signs remained bold and clear, and Sam knew that he had successfully navigated the final showdown.